Hello everyone, I'm Terry Duke, and welcome to my channel. Earlier this year, I live streamed one of my favorite mods from Mountain Blade Warband called Perisnow. I played the mod without cheats and succeeded in conquering the entire world and made a video summarizing the campaign. Afterwards, I began live streaming another close favorite, Brytenwalda, which I also completed without cheats. And so today's video is the summary of this campaign, which will also serve as a sort of strategy guide so you can learn from my mistakes. If you haven't seen the previous campaign video, link is down below, and if you enjoy the content, as always, feel free to subscribe for more. Thank you very much, and now here's how I became Brytenwalda. So as you can see, the entirety of the modern day UK is now under control from the recently established Kingdom of Perisnow. I'm not joking, that is the name I chose as an Easter egg, and for a form of continuity, if you will. And the queen, my character, I've actually named Birgit, which was also my wife in Perisnow, for the same reason. But okay, how did we get here? Well, I initially created my character as a strong picked woman, and considering the difficulty of the mod, I went with an easy start by selecting a lesser noble for my parent, and training as a retainer myself for optimal fighting skills. However, from there the campaign got instantly hard, between damage received set to 100% and various difficulty settings enabled such as permanent wounds, bleeding, and stamina. I immediately lost my first fight against the lower tier bandits. But I was determined, so I attacked them again, only to lose again. Oh my god, those rocks hit like hell! And again. Jesus. Eventually I did beat them, but it set the tone for my first few sessions of the campaign. From there we entered a grind as my main objective was to simply level up, get some loot, and get a warband started. This became exceedingly difficult since again, damage received was set to 100%. The only way to win a battle and keep most of my warband intact was to find groups in smaller numbers and lower tiers. Anything else always turned into a bloodbath. I also tried my hands at tournaments of course, but they are tough. One lesson I learned from my chat though is that if you fight in tournaments, you only need to beat 2 opponents before being knocked down to guarantee that you'll be accepted into the next round. Didn't help me though. So after getting in a bunch of battles, making money, leveling up, and losing my entire warband a bunch of times while also playing offline in between live streams, by the end of the second session, I had a big enough warband to lay siege to a castle. The castle I picked was Mana, I have no idea how to say that. The reason I picked that castle is because on this tiny island, it felt like it wouldn't really be attacked by anybody. A direct assault is never recommended though, it's always preferable to use the mod's siege planning mechanic to starve the garrisons out. And it actually worked for me on the first try. It didn't go as far as to starve them, but we had several events that wore down the garrisons from multiple skirmishes, and eventually the castle surrendered. And so the Kingdom of Perisnow was born. However, it didn't get much easier from there. I got in a war against Mirs, and they had a lot of lords that immediately attacked the island. In fact, I narrowly avoided a complete massacre, as I merely wanted to talk to the lord to negotiate a peace, and instead fell into an ambush that nearly wiped out my army. However, I was able to escape and get to my castle where I had reinforcements. And then they just left. That was insanely lucky. At this point though, I still found the campaign was going too slowly. While I was able to gather troops and increase the party size significantly, the main difficulty was winning battles while preserving my army. Any battle with equal numbers on each side always guaranteed that I lost at least half of my army, which would need to be replenished. Any fight in which I was outnumbered almost guaranteed a crushing defeat. The only time I managed to completely wreck an army despite the difficulty settings was when I carefully waited for them by a bridge, and as I held the bridge and a choke point, I was able to slaughter them. But that's it. I can't count the number of times in comparison that I just lost my entire warband and I had to start from scratch. So by the third session, I considered on the mod's insane difficulty and lowered the received damage to troops by 50%, which instantly made it possible to fight multiple battles in a row. However, the new problem I also had by then was that over half of the other kingdoms were at war with me. I could not go 10 seconds without a warning that one of my new villages in Wales was being raided, which also made it impossible to go on the offensive at all. There was always someone attacking. And the fact that I had to keep a huge army also meant I was often too slow to catch up to smaller attackers who simply fled. So after struggling like that for a while, a key part of my strategy became to capture every lord possible. Normally I would either let them go for an increase in relations and honor, or if I did capture them, it would be for the ransom money. But now I decided I would refuse every ransom offer. That way any lord I caught was one less lord to worry about until they sued for peace. And that actually worked. In my main town in Wales, I ended up with at least 24 lords permanently imprisoned, and I started getting attacked significantly less as a result, and was finally able to go on the offensive. By then though, some of those kingdoms also started to sue for peace, which did cut me some slack. And that was effectively how I slowly but surely conquered everything. Every time I went to war, I would capture every lord until the kingdom had no offensive power left, and then I'd steamroll over their lands, either forcing every castle and town into surrender, or occasionally assaulting the walls when they got stubborn. By the 10th session, it was mostly down to Scotland and Ireland. I did accept some lords into my kingdom, but I usually stick to the honorable ones, and there's very few of them. All others were turned down frequently. I kept most castles and towns and villages to myself, which ensured a steady supply of money, and through my own renown, I was fielding over 800 men in my warband at any given time. And so the strategy that would define the speed with which I would finish this campaign was the following. After declaring war, I would capture every enemy lord I came across, imprison them, and then go on the offensive. By that point in the campaign, kingdoms had been beating each other as well, so lots of castles had exchanged hands multiple times and had small garrisons, and so many of them would surrender when I asked the first time, at which point I'd leave a small garrison of my own, usually 100 to 200 men of weak tier troops like peasants. On my way to the next castle, I would use my vast coffers to bribe village elders into replenishing my warband with more peasants, then go to the next castle or town. For castles, if they did not surrender immediately, most of them would surrender after the first assault on the wall to place the ladders, which is needed before the main attack. However, these pre-assaults would cause them casualties, so 90% of the castle would surrender then and there before I actually attacked the walls. On the few occasions that they still didn't surrender, I just assaulted, and after a bit of grind the castles were mine. For towns, 90% of them would instantly surrender after I built a circumvallation around the town, which meant they could not escape anymore and would eventually be starved out. For the 10% of towns that did refuse to surrender, I needed to assault, but it was usually over quickly. And once again, I'd leave a small garrison of peasants and replenish by stopping at villages on the way to another castle or town. And that's assuming the towns and castles didn't have a bunch of prisoners of varying tiers in their dungeons, which they often did, so I often replenished my army for free using much better troops than just peasants. So by the final session, using this strategy, I was able to conquer all of Scotland, Ireland, and even squash a rebellion in less than 4 hours, and there we have it. After 800 days of campaign, I had almost single-handedly united all of the UK and became the Brytenwalda. So now let's look at my character level and my gear and whatnot, as well as the state of the warband and how much money I'm making. Then I'll share some tips from the campaign that might help you out. Alright, so looking at the character's level, we ended the campaign at level 38. Some skills are in red, and that's the result of injuries that lowered my skills. This includes athletics, for example, which has brought down to 0. But in terms of skills that I really took the time to max out, there was surgery, of course, to reduce the amount of permadeaths, engineer to really speed up the sieges, and trainer to really get the recruits to level up quickly. So as a result, as you can see, I really increased the intelligence considerably, but agility and strength actually used to be much higher. The reason they got lowered is because of battle injuries, which is one of the features in this mod that makes it all the harder. However, in terms of my statistics, I ended up single-handedly throughout the campaign killing over 3,000 men and wounding another 1,153. My God. And just 3 friendly troops wounded. That's not too bad. In terms of renown, by the end of the campaign, I had over 2,546, which is why I was able to field such a large warband. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Brytenwalda, it's the large warbands. And because I kept most of the feast for myself, this is the list of every place that I own. Jesus. In terms of the warband itself, I have a current limit of 859. Like I said, there is no more prisoner management skill, so really it comes down to the size of your warband, and after a while it just capped at 110. And most of these troops, they're pretty much gathered from everywhere, but the majority of them are either mid or heavy. For example, I have 17 elite camp, I don't know how to say that, but they're some of the best troops in the mod, and I have 17 of them. Because of the trainer perk and all the fighting, there's always some troops that I forget to upgrade, but if I go for it, there's always a lot. And in this mod, cavalry is very expensive and very hard to use, so I pretty much never bother with it. In terms of companions, they're pretty random and forgettable overall. Throughout the campaign, I had a lot of companions, but a lot of them ended up quitting because they just didn't enjoy themselves anymore, I guess. A lot of them I ended up losing in battles, and I just never found them in other taverns, just didn't occur to me. Currently, the only 3 companions that I have are these ones, and as you can see, like, I've never bothered to really equip them considerably. Inka was like the main companion I've had for most of the campaign, and she's got a kill count of 112, so she's pretty good. For the inventory, I got some pretty good gear overall. A lot of this equipment comes from the unique bandit lairs that you can attack throughout Brytenwalda. There's 3 of them, and from one of them, the Old Hero as he's called, you get the Duck's Helm Gold, which is one of the best helmets in the game. From one of the lairs, which is a cave all the way up in Scotland, you can get the 2-handed axe called My Wife, which is pretty much the best 2-handed axe in the game. And as you can see, like, both My Wife and the Wolf Lorica required 14 in strength. So what happened was I had enough strength to wield them, and then I got injured and my strength was reduced to 12, so now if I take it off, I will never be able to put them back on again until I level up and re-increase my strength. My sword is Virios Falcata, which is the sword that you get from the Old Roman near Hadrian's Wall. He will give you a quest to conquer London in the name of the Romans, and if you do, he will reward you with this sword, which is, once again, one of the best swords in the game. For the Wolf Lorica, this is one of the items that you get from talking to specific armorsmith and weaponsmith in certain towns, who will make you unique items that you couldn't get otherwise, and those are essentially the best armors in the game that you can get. And that's pretty much it, really. As for how much money I'm making every week, of course it's going to vary wildly. As it stands, there's still some rogue lords that are looting some villages here and there. The villages themselves often need time to increase their prosperity, so it's likely that if I waited for a long time, money would just keep piling up more and more. But as it stands, because of how many thieves I own, it's considerable. But as you can see, as we get to the bottom, the villages, they really don't offer me much. All the ones that say none, that's because they've been recently looted, so they have yet to give me any money. And what we see here is that there's also a loss due to tax inefficiency, which comes to 159,000. Just 159,000 are being lost every week because of all of this. At the same time, I've got garrisons in all of my castles, and so at the end of the day, I am currently making 135,000 per week. Roughly. Like I said, it's going to keep going up as my villages get better and better. Okay, so now, in terms of tips, the best I can give you is that it pays off to be a good guy in Brytenwalda. Don't attack villagers, don't loot villages, instead help every village at every opportunity, and soon enough you'll get the Patron Saint perk. I'm not really sure how it works, but basically as long as you keep your reputation high and behave well and help villages, eventually you'll get a message that says that the people are ready to rise up for you. And from there, you'll enjoy high relations with nearly every village on the world map, which means that I'll be willing to give you lots of new troops, sometimes of even higher tiers. And if that's not enough, don't hesitate to bribe village elders. This is a unique feature from Brytenwalda where you can simply donate 500 to the village elders for an immediate boost in relations, which allows you to recruit from a fresh pool of recruits every single time. So technically, so long as you have the money, you can easily replenish your entire warband from a single village, and it's not even cheating. In terms of making money, there are 2 reliable ways of making lots of it, and those would be ransoming prisoners and battle trophies. The amount of prisoners you can get scale with the size of your warband, up to 110 roughly. So after every battle, make sure to capture as many of the higher tier troops as you can. As a rough estimate, every time I ransomed all of these prisoners to a ransom broker in a tavern, I could make upwards of 25,000 shillings. And that's for any large-scale battle. Ransom brokers aren't always in taverns though, so a good thing to do is if you have a town, just keep hoarding prisoners endlessly until a ransom broker does show up in your tavern, at which point you can transfer all your prisoners into your party, go back to the broker and ransom them. Rinse and repeat until your dungeons are empty, and you can easily make endless amounts of money from this. The best loot you can get from battles though, to maximize profits, are battle and war trophies. These can be found in random amounts after each battle, and they're the only loot worth taking. When you do, you can head to the market in towns and go to the trade trophies options, and from there, battle trophies go for 500 each, while war trophies go for 1000 each, and also give you 800 XP per trophy, which is why even towards the end of my campaign I was still able to level up consistently. In terms of campaign, the best strategy remains, in my opinion, to capture every lord and keep all the fiefs for yourself. You don't actually need lords in this campaign since most of them are backstabbing bastards anyway, but because with your renown you can also get a much massive warband, you can also comfortably conquer anything by yourself without calling up your vassals. And because you get to keep all the fiefs, you make a lot more money, and as you capture enemy lords, it's not like they can do much to take your fiefs back from you. But in terms of skills that you should level up to really make the campaign as efficient as possible, you really need to max out the engineering skill. At level 10, you can build the circumvallation, which causes most settlements to surrender instantly in less than 24 hours. And it's also worth maxing out the trainer perk, as you'll be constantly replacing dead troops with peasants, and you need them to level up fast. But other than that, well, that's about it for today, so thanks for watching everyone! After beating Parisno and then beating Brytenwalda, I went for the World of Ice and Fire mod, but unlike for Parisno and Brytenwalda, this playthrough became a living hell as it was without a doubt the most difficult mod I had ever played. For the next video summarizing that crash out, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.